Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to this bonus episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. This is episode number 98 with Karen Weissinger, who works at Maya Consulting down in Texas, doing some great work with their school districts down there. It was a pleasure to get to talk to Karen about her work, her backstory, and just what brings her to be really dedicated to this work and bridging kind of gaps between K through 12 and higher education, just really affecting positive outcomes for students across her entire state. So just really great stuff about what we're all going through, trying to move our collective institutions and organizations forward for the benefit of our students. So I know that you'll get a lot out of it, just like I did, and be sure to check out the resources and everything that we talked about down in the show notes and ways to connect with Karen and the work that she is doing. So after this brief message from our sponsor, this is episode number 98, a bonus episode with Karen Weissinger. This episode is sponsored by Degree.me, a one-stop college research tool for students. If you work for a college or university, you'll want to learn all about their ability to connect you with the right students at a budget-friendly price. To find out more, please visit degree.me/HEG. Thank you so much, Karen, for taking time out for the podcast here. And this is just yet another in a kind of thankfully long list now of kind of good serendipitous connections that are coming out of, just genuine networking. And, I've just been kind of putting myself out there. So I'm very glad, we've been able to get connected here and record what I know will be a really fascinating conversation, kind of wide-reaching for all of education through your experience and everything. So, we'll start there just to, make sure folks know a little bit more about you. If you want to introduce yourself and give kind of a brief overview of your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. Well, thanks, Dustin, so much for having me today. My name is Karen Weissinger, and I work for an education consulting firm, Maya Consulting. And I guess to start with my professional journey and how I got here, I might take you back all the way to childhood and say that I currently live in my hometown where I grew up, which is Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I went to Catholic schools all the way from kindergarten up to 12th grade. And so growing up, I very much lived in a pretty sheltered environment, very much in my comfort zone, surrounded by people who looked like me, who had similar religious beliefs that I did. And it wasn't until college, I went to college at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, and it was really my freshman year where I realized that there was this world that so many people had not grown up having the same privileged lifestyle that I was afforded growing up. I remember freshman year algebra class and looking around and realizing I was someone who thought I wasn't great at math in high school. And here I was, and there were people in my freshman class who were struggling with some basic intro math concepts, had some other similar experiences and some English classes. And so I was really starting to grapple in college with this idea of inequities existing in our society. And as cliche as it sounds, I actually came across a flyer that was hanging in the honors college at Ole Miss that said, "Closing the academic achievement gap is our generation's civil rights issue." And that really struck me. And so I ended up attending an information session. The flyer was from the Teach for America organization, and began to learn more about the organization. And, really, I think it's only been recently that I have come to realize about myself that I have always had this strong sense of a conviction and a desire for social justice and fighting for equity. And so I decided to apply for the Teach for America program and thought, you know what, now is the time to really get out of my comfort zone. And I ended up teaching in the South Bronx, seventh grade English language arts. And it was a very challenging time. Here I was, an idealistic, right out of college, thinking I could change the world. And, my story in years following probably very similar to others that have gone a similar path of doing Teach for America. I taught for a few more years. I took on some administrator roles, and then I ended up was living back in Memphis and met my now husband at a mutual friend's wedding. He was living in Austin, Texas. I was living in Memphis, and we ended up deciding to get married. And so I thought, okay, now is the time to live in the same place now that we are going to get married. And so I made the move to Austin, Texas to be with him and continued to work in schools. I was a founding elementary school principal. And then after having my second child, decided to transition out of the classroom, school environment that I had known for over a decade in education, and wanted to transition into something that would allow me more of the opportunity and flexibility to be a mom and have a job at the same time. So I left the school and ended up joining my consulting, which my boss was a former colleague of mine at the school where I worked, and so that's what led me to Maya Consulting, and have been with them now for over 2 years.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of reflecting on your, like, the entirety of your education, professional journey and everything. And, I think there's just so much there of like understanding like your own story and like what the experience of others is in education, and, how much work there is to be done there. So, I guess like we'll start there, because I think, the main topic that we want to focus on for this, and this will be kind of like a bonus, like special episode, like, a little bit more focused, but just sort of like, system level change. And I think, it could be taken a couple different ways, I guess, of, from what you're speaking of like being a founding school principal, or, if there's ever like new initiatives that were happening or changes that were happening that you were a part of. But just like that idea of system level change is certainly very relevant in the times now of like, having to really, pivot into digital education quickly, or just be, influencing change in your organization around like, fighting back against like systemic racism and those sort of things. So I'm just curious, kind of like, in any capacity of education, like what your experience has been with that, whether it's firsthand doing it, helping to consult to, help kind of shepherd that change, or, just anything that comes to mind, because I feel like that's obviously just sort of super relevant for folks right now.
Yeah, definitely. So at Maya, we're a small firm, a group of all educators, and our mission, our vision is that we want excellent and equitable schools with inclusive communities that prepare all children and families for success in life. And we have had the opportunity over the past couple of years to be able to work with both school districts and work at that system level, like you're talking about, as well as at the individual school level. We also support nonprofits and foundations. and we do work that involves strategic and sustainable improvements in practice and systems. And the two big areas that I have personally been involved in when we think of systems change has been one through our work as technical assistance providers through the state education agency in Texas. We have played a role of really three different roles, being an advisor to districts, doing project management, and then being that liaison between the district and the state education agency. And we have now supported over 20 school districts in Texas to plan and implement what we have been calling in Texas as bold school actions to improve schools and outcomes for kids. And the action that I have been personally involved in and that I have come to be really passionate for has been around partnerships and working with school districts and nonprofits, early childhood centers, institutes of higher education, to work with both of them to come together and form in-district partnerships in order to provide more quality programming and options for students. So the ultimate goal is to be able to increase the number of A and B campuses that exist in a district and decrease the amount of DNF, rated schools that are out there. And so the partnerships have been something that I have just really come to see as an avenue, as a route to make that system level change. I think when organizations can look to each other as not as competitors, but as, how can we work together, put egos aside, and really do what's best for students. And so that's been really, really exciting work. And through that, I've spent a lot of time working with district superintendents, assistant superintendents, because a lot of this work takes school board approval and informing the community and finding out what it is they need and what they're looking for, and helping districts find partners that can help bring extra expertise, resources, capacity to their district that might not have been there previously.
Yeah, and I guess fascinating stuff. And I mean, I'm kind of curious with like kind of that saying like an A and B rating, like the success that you are able to achieve. Like, what are some like tangible examples of like the successes of your work? Of like, you're implementing, a new policy, a new process, a new platform, something. What are some of those things that you're measuring that say like, okay, great, this person or this organization, has been able to reap the benefits of this change that you've helped them to implement?
Sure. Well, on a specific level, we have worked with 4 different districts to expand access and quality for early childhood. So we have, like in Galveston, Texas, for example, we helped an early childhood center there, along with the district, to expand pre-K for 3-year-olds, for 4-year-olds that didn't exist previously in the district. We also have worked with Texas A&M San Antonio, which is a institute of higher education in San Antonio that is working really closely with several of the school districts there to, especially on the south side of San Antonio, where there is a high economically disadvantaged population, high English language learner population. And it has been so fascinating to see this university wanting to go down to the K to 12 level and reach out to the local districts and see how they can partner to bring resources to each other. So, for example, being able to bring more like dual credit classes to high school, to be able to have more student teachers teaching on the campus, to create that natural pipeline from high school into college, to have a place for the college professors to do research in a very like real, tangible way. So those have been some of the exciting successes. Texas A&M San Antonio has created 2 partnerships within Edgewood, which is a small district there. At the middle school level, they're now working with another school district, talking about one at a high school level, South San Antonio ISD, and so they have desire to continue to expand and grow. We also have seen just across the board the districts that have implemented these new bold actions that we're seeing about like 12% who have been able to have more A and B schools and like 10% fewer D and F schools after implementing these bold actions over the course of just a couple of years. So when you've got a really large district with a lot of campuses, that's really big improvement in a short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like, I mean, it's come up a few times on previous episodes, but just sort of this, like, I mean, even kind of a broader point of view on it, because I think, it's been talked about just with like college is kind of like a network approach of, kind of putting the competitive aspect aside and, building really good, like, transfer pathways or sharing resources or different things. But, even more broadly of like what you're mentioning of like, a college really embedding itself in the community that it's in with the school districts and just all those opportunities that are there. And, just any of the seeds that you plant of helping an early childhood program, like you're saying, like, just helps the student be more prepared each grade, as they go on, or just like, even if you're directing it, even like very precisely on kind of college access or pathway programs of helping high schoolers or something. It's just that idea of like kind of working better together versus like colleges kind of being like cranky that they don't get qualified applicants. And then like people in K through 12 feeling like there's not really like, I don't know, like there's like kind of gatekeeping or something, like they just don't have kind of the transparency into, the other side or something. So it's just really refreshing to hear like there's, been great successes there with, some of the institutions that you're working with. But certainly this is all great. Like, 'cause I think, obviously the outcomes are really positive, but I'm sure the process could get, a bit messy with a lot of perhaps politics or just like, personalities and those sort of things. So I guess just talk us through that a little bit of just sort of like, those friction points that you encounter, like the complexities and how you work to kind of push through those and get around them.
Yeah, definitely. The politics has been interesting, and I'll say it's been really new for me because before working with my consulting, the only thing I knew was within the walls of the school building, and so it was only recently that I began to see the enormous power and responsibility that school boards have. And so that has been something new that I've been able to, kind of pull back the curtain and see, as well as just the responsibility that the district superintendents have and that relationship that they have with their school board. And yeah, I would say that one big lesson that I have certainly learned has been this idea of context is everything. And education is such a local thing, and every school is different, every district is different, and we have very much wanted to be the type of um, consultants and partners for the communities that we work with, where we don't want to come in, saying this is the way to do things, this is how it has to be done. We really try and spend a lot of time in the beginning just learning and listening and trying to figure out, okay, what is the vision for this district? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they proud of? What are some of the challenges? What is keeping them up at night? What are their goals for this potential partnership or this new school that they're trying to create? How is that going to solve different problems? And so, really learning, listening, trying to find out as much as we can about the community, and then also another big lesson it has been around I guess I'll call it like executive engagement and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we are talking to the right people. That was a lesson certainly learned kind of the first time around doing this type of work, is that you can waste a lot of time if you're not talking to the right leaders within a system. And so whether that is the actual superintendent or assistant superintendent, a chief innovation officer, it doesn't matter who it is, as long as that person has been given the authority and the power to make the decisions. And so I think a lot of times initiatives are thrown at districts, or they try and go about accomplishing things or at the campus level, but there has to be that buy-in and investment from the very top, I think, in order for changes to really sustain, and that investment by the community. And so I would say those have been some of the biggest lessons, and figuring out, how do you influence those people? Who can I call to learn more that has worked with them previously? How can I find out what makes them tick? How do they like to communicate? Do I need to send a text message versus an email because they're not responding? All of these just interpersonal things too. I have just had to learn and overcome, to figure out how best to make headway and to gain trust, in order to figure out how I can best help move their initiatives and plans forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I can make boiling down to just the quirks of, yeah, like this person only responds to text messages. Like they're not really an email person. And you're like, okay, all right, well, it's like just kind of going with that or something. But then, yeah, even just the bigger things of like, yeah, talking to the right people could be where it's like, well, we wasted months of time because we weren't
Yeah.
talking to the right person. So we're going to have to like go over everything again or something. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, then, I think obviously like this is such an interesting time because I think you're seeing that there's kind of like gravitational pulls both ways. Like we're in such a disruptive, unexpected time that is in a lot of ways accelerating change that was, sort of overdue or necessary or kind of happening anyway. But I think there's also tendencies to be like, well, everything is so chaotic. Let's just really like kind of dig our heels into the way that we've always done things and do everything that we can to do it like we did it before, of like, especially with, anywhere in education, whether it is a K through 12 school or a college, because I joke about this a lot, and I get that it's a very complex kind of situation of how you like, keep an institution going with everything that's going on and trying to bring students and everybody back on campus, but just like, well, let's just put plexiglass everywhere so that we can have students back on campus just like we always did it. And like everything is just like, the same, versus like, okay, well, the budget that we'd use to put plexiglass everywhere, like how can we maybe leverage resources to embrace like digital education, different platforms or whatever, like I think those
Mhm.
are the dilemmas that everybody is trying to grapple with. So
Yeah.
from your point of view, as leaders in education just broadly, like as they're grappling with these with these dilemmas, just generally, like, what kind of advice would you give to people, or even the people that work with those people, of like trying to give good advice or something, to help them to make decisions? Like, yeah, just from your point of view, like, what advice would you give, just with all of this kind of in consideration?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, I think that what we're seeing across the board is that leaders are so focused on what is happening in the next minute, in the next hour, in the next day. Things are so rapidly changing with COVID and reopening plans and adjusting to that. And while all of that obviously has to happen, and you have to think about what is in front of you, one thing that I really wish that we were seeing more is, how can we take this crisis and use it for a catalyst for change, like you're saying, and to really reinvent and reimagine education. And I think in order to do that, we need leaders who are going to be bold, and who might take the political hits, who are going to be able to ask for help and seek out leaders in the community, partnerships, organizations, and form groups that can continue to think through strategic planning, long-term planning, and how can educating students look different in 1 to 5 years. How do we want to use this time to really think about how we need to pivot, and how we need to make sure we are considering students social emotional needs and trauma informed decisions, and all of these things. And so I do want that. I think that's my one desire, is that while leaders are so focused now on the now, how can either they or a team really be focused on, okay, well, what's going to be next, and how can we work for that? And I think too, just the communication right now, I think, is so important. And I've seen leaders and districts be more successful when it seems like they're hearing from a leader more consistently about the current task at hand, and really speaking from a place of humility and honesty, and trying to keep that communication flowing as frequently as possible, and really taking this time to listen to what it is that our community needs. What is it that we've got to improve in order to prepare students for to have these more 21st century skills, that's going to prepare them not only to get to college, but through college and persist. And I think all of that is so important to be thinking about the future, while also balancing what's going on in the here and now.
Right. Well, and I think an important detail there for sure that, again, has kind of come up often, is making decisions with your students, not like solely for them. And certainly that can apply to most stakeholders, but like, you should at least be like helping people to feel involved and heard, even if like the decision ultimately does not go the way that they would hope it would be. But
Right.
people still feel involved, because I think we've seen at times where that is not the case, especially right now. And certainly there's a lot of urgency, and you know, uh, decisions are need to be, needing to be made quickly, but, still trying to do the due diligence of including people. And, and I think too, that idea of like really making like change sustainable, I think that's why to me, like putting plexiglass everywhere, like for classrooms, like feels like kind of like a punchline, because it's like, what other use is there for that? I don't know. Like, and it feels like there's like clearly another
Right.
way, in certain instances, there's not, where like somewhere definitely needs to be open and they need to keep people safe, but that there's such a clear path to, kind of digital education, with that fork in the road. But, and that just feels like more sustainable change that would allow for like, potentially like greater access for students, and, just more, that kind of choice in the modality, and the way that different content is facilitated for courses. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all interesting stuff, and I think I don't know. Again, I don't ever claim to make it make people think that it's just like, oh, it's just that easy, just like it's a fork in the road, and just do whatever, like there's so many other things to consider. But like you said, it takes people with kind of vision and good, I think, decision making and communication skills, and all those sort of things packaged together to make sure that the decision that's made is thoughtful, intentional, inclusive, and considerate of everything that it needs to be, and is communicated clearly and confidently to all the stakeholders. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting just to see where we are 6 months from now. How we're taking these lessons learned, and I think that for a lot of us, myself included, we like to think, oh, we're going to be back to the quote normal, but this could go on much longer. And so yeah, like how I was participating in a conversation yesterday, just thinking about preparing buildings for when students do return, and knowing that if some have been closed and vacant, making sure that, like, just thinking through turning on air conditionings in time, and just all of the things that need to happen, but all of the uncertainty around not knowing when that will be. I think a lot of times that can just paralyze leaders, because there are so many decisions, and there is so much unknown.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then, as we start to kind of wind down, I'm curious, like anything that helps inform your work, or just great resources that you're seeing out there. So, just anything kind of under the sun that you'd want to give a tip of the hat to that we can include in the show note. Yeah, just any relevant resources.
Sure. So I right now am listening to, probably along with a lot of other people, the podcast Nice White Parents. Have you listened to that one,
I know
Dustin?
of it. I haven't got the chance. Yeah.
Yeah, it has really hit close to home. Just in thinking about the work that I've been doing, and the fact that I've school age children now, and it's really made me just think about my approach with communities. And I highly recommend any parents, educators, to take a listen to that. I also have been really obsessed with Brene Brown's Unlocking Us podcast. I feel like it's helped me get through a lot of the pandemic. I think she's had on some really amazing, diverse group of thought leaders, and so recommend that one. In terms of books, I just got finished working with my team on two books as we work towards trying to create a more working organization with distributive leadership. We just finished reading Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan, and Culture Code by Daniel Cole. So those are two books that I'd recommend if you're looking to just improve culture, team dynamics, and might be thinking about how to structure your organization differently.
Good stuff. I just downloaded the first episode of Nice White Parents, because it's like
Oh, good.
always like stuff swirling, and like anytime like somebody mentions something in particular that I've known about, I'm like, well, I gotta at least check it out, because it's just like there's so much stuff out there. So it's like anybody giving a recommendation, I'm like, okay, all right, well, it's
Yeah.
not just like random, the ether on Twitter or whatever. It's like, oh, it's somebody I'm talking to, and all right, well, I'll take their word
And
for
with
it.
you being a parent now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So good call on that one. And yeah, I mean, it's just like a 5-part series, like a podcast series. So I worked through that pretty quickly. And yeah, I've been like, engaging more with audiobooks during quarantine and everything. And that's helped me to get through more books, and, still trying to keep my healthy diet of podcasts going too. So,
Yeah, now that you with a newborn, you really have to. I have listened to a lot more books than I ever did before, because as soon as you lay down at night, I'm sure you are falling asleep. It's hard to keep your eye open and read once you are so tired and have such busy days.
Yeah, exactly. Or just like, I'm walking the dog, I'm doing anything. It's like, yeah, I can like listen to stuff. I can't like read a book while I'm like rocking her to sleep. Like it'd be very hard to like hold the
Right.
book and turn the pages and do it, So yeah, it's
Yes.
audio to the rescue.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, just kind of like a big kind of pointed question here at the end. So kind of take it as you will. But, we always end these episodes kind of optimistic, future oriented. So for this episode, we'll just end it with this. What are you looking forward to for the future of education?
For the future of education, well, I've got to, I think, put a plug again for what I've shared as passion and what I truly think can help create positive change in the future for our students, and that's the community partnerships. I truly believe that uh, schools cannot be everything for everybody. They were not designed that way, structured that way. There are so many challenges that exist for families these days, especially families living in poverty. And so I would love to see more schools and districts create true, authentic partnerships and really think about how we can bring others to the table to provide all the wide range of services that we are seeing that students need, that this pandemic has really laid bare. The need for the community to come together. And so I think that's one thing, a silver lining that I think we can see from this is how can in the future we continue to approach education from a we're all in this together uh, lens. So I'd love to see that. And I'll end with, it reminds me of this African proverb. It's really guided my work at Maya. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So just inspire leaders to, focus on putting students and families first and recognize that when you work together, you can go further together.
Yeah, it's a classic adage there, and always resonant, I think. Because I think, yeah, I mean, all of that makes me think of just like the things that we're doing, like feeling like we're moving, kind of heaven and earth to make sure that, people have what they need to be able to, attend classes and like, giving people laptops and internet connections and, providing meals to people who need them and like all these things, as optimistic as I am, like I know like all of those probably will not continue to forever, but it's like, I mean, we're doing it now. They maybe could, and that would be like transformative for so
Yeah.
many people if we like were just like, wow, we were able to like figure out the logistics of all this. Like, what would it look like to keep doing it? For the people that need it. So those sort of things, yeah. Like I
Yeah.
mean, make me hopeful that it's like, well, people said it wasn't possible, but I mean, we figured out a way. So that
Yeah.
just is
Yeah.
just, a really powerful thing. Yeah, of just how we can. Yeah, I mean that idea of like, because it certainly was not like any sole kind of single player like doing all these things. It really was like those partnerships. I think, like you're saying, and I think that that's definitely a good kind of food for thought for people, and just a lot of great stuff that you shared, and the resources and everything. So just thank you so much for the time that you took out really quick for the podcast here, and just sharing your story and all your experiences. And just look forward to folks being able to hear this. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to chat.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dustin. I so appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.